It is officially over. For years, we have sat here and speculated. We have looked at the charts, we have looked at the open interest, and we have guessed. We have said, one day the banks will break. We have said, one day the naked shorts will get caught offside so badly that the entire financial system will have to bend the knee. We have hypothesized that the bullion banks are leveraged to the hilt, playing a dangerous game of fractional reserve paper trading against a physical asset that is running out. But up until this morning, that was just a theory. It was a mathematical probability, sure, but we didn't have the smoking gun. We didn't have the body. Well, stop guessing. Stop speculating. Because that day is today. The body has been found. Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here, while you were glued to your screens watching the spot price of silver hit $77.16, while you were celebrating the breakout and calculating your net worth, something much more important, much darker, and much more terrifying was happening in the plumbing of the global financial system, something that the mainstream media is terrified to report because it proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that the banking system is insolvent. We just received the official data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York regarding their overnight reverse repurchase agreements, the repo facility, for this morning, Friday, December 26th. And the number that just flashed across the terminal is not a typo. It is not an error. It is a confession. $17,251,000,000. In a single morning, in the quiet hours just after the Christmas holiday, the too-big-to-fail banks tapped the Federal Reserve's emergency liquidity window for over $17 billion in cash. Now, you need to understand what this means. You need to understand what the repo market actually is. This is not the window where healthy banks go to get a loan to expand their business. This is not where you go to get capital for a new project. The repo facility is the pawn shop of the last resort. It is the emergency room for a heart attack. If you are a healthy bank with a balanced book, you do not touch the repo facility. You trade in the interbank market. You borrow from your peers. It is a badge of honor to avoid the Fed's window because going there is a signal of weakness. It is the walk of shame of the banking world. So, why would the masters of the universe, the entities that supposedly control the global economy, need $17 billion in cash at 8 o'clock a.m. on the day after Christmas? Is it for payroll? No. Is it for operational expenses? No. They need it because they are bleeding to death. They need it because they just received the biggest margin call in the history of the commodities markets. Connect the dots. Look at the timing. It is impeccable. Yesterday, silver gapped up. Overnight, it teleported to $77. The banks are sitting on short positions that number in the hundreds of millions of ounces. They sold those contracts at $30. They sold them at $50. They sold them at $70, thinking they could tamp it down like they always do. They thought they could spook the retail investors, trigger the stops, and buy it back cheaper. But the retail investors didn't sell. The Chinese industrial buyers didn't sell. The vaults were empty. The price did go down. It went vertical. And right now, silver is trading at $77.16. Do the math. Every single dollar that silver rises creates billions of dollars in losses on their books. But there is a difference between unrealized losses and a margin call. For months, the banks have been hiding these losses. They mark them as unrealized. They pretend that the price will come back down, so they don't have to acknowledge the hole in their balance sheet. They kick the can down the road. But the COMEX clearinghouse doesn't care about your accounting tricks. The exchange doesn't care if you think the price will go down next week. The exchange cares about solvency right now. When the price moves $5 against you in 24 hours, the clearinghouse computer spits out a number. It says, you're underwater. Post the cash to cover the risk, or we liquidate your position. This morning, the computer spat out a number, and that number was evidently $17 billion. The clearinghouse called the banks and said, pay up. And the banks looked at their ledgers, looked at their liquid cash reserves, and realized the terrifying truth. They didn't have it. They are illiquid. They are insolvent on a mark-to-market basis. So they had no choice. They gathered up their U.S. Treasury bonds, the only collateral they have left, and they ran to the Federal Reserve. They pawned their treasuries for overnight cash just to keep the lights on, just to prevent the clearinghouse from forcibly closing their short positions and sending the price of silver to $200 instantly. This $17 billion is not a stimulus check. It is a tourniquet. It is a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding before the patient dies on the table. And think about the day. It's Friday. In the banking world, bad news is always buried on a Friday. Banks fail on Fridays. Regulators seize assets on Fridays. The fact that this liquidity spike happened on the Friday after Christmas, when nobody was supposed to be watching, tells you everything you need to know about the severity of the crisis. They were hoping this would slip under the radar. They were hoping that the volume would be low enough that nobody would notice the Fed printing $17 billion to bail out a silver short. But we noticed. We are watching. And what we are seeing is the breakdown of the suppression machine. For decades, the scheme worked like this. The banks sell paper silver to push the price down. If the price rises, they sell more paper. They have infinite paper, so they can always win. But the one thing that kills that scheme is a liquidity crisis. If you run out of cash to post margin for your new shorts, you can't sell anymore. You lose your ammunition. The $17 billion represents the bottom of the barrel. It represents the moment where the banks ran out of their own money and had to start using the taxpayers' money, via the Fed, to fight the market. This changes the entire dynamic of the trade. We are no longer fighting JP Morgan or Citi. We are now fighting the Federal Reserve directly. The Fed has stepped in to become the counterparty. They are effectively subsidizing the short position. But here's the catch. Even the Fed cannot print physical silver. They can print dollars to keep the banks alive, but they cannot print the metal to deliver into the Chinese market. In fact, this bailout makes the situation worse. Think about it. The banks needed cash because the dollar is losing value against silver. The Fed's solution? Print more dollars. Inject $17 billion new dollars into the system. What does that do? It devalues the dollar even further. It adds more fuel to the inflation fire. It validates the exact thesis that is driving silver higher. It is a self-defeating feedback loop. The more they bail out the shorts, the higher the price goes. The higher the price goes, the bigger the bailout needs to be. We are watching the beginning of a hyperinflationary melt-up, localized specifically in the commodities market. The banking system has inadvertently trapped itself. They cannot let the price rise or they go bankrupt. But they cannot stop the price from rising without printing money, which makes the price rise faster. This $17 billion is just the first tranche. It is the tip of the iceberg. If silver goes to $80, which could happen before the market closes today, that $17 billion won't be enough. They will need $20 billion, then $30 billion. We're going to see the repo market explode just like it did in September 2019, right before the global financial system seized up. Remember September 2019? The repo rate spiked, the Fed panicked, and a few months later they flooded the world with liquidity. We are seeing the exact same pattern repeat, but the trigger this time isn't a nebulous interbank lending freeze. The trigger is specific. The trigger is silver. The trigger is a hard asset rebellion against paper promises.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. December 27th, 2025. I'm your host, Joshua Michael with Noncompliant America. Thank you very much for joining me today, few days after Christmas. It's been a wild season this quarter. If you've been following the markets, silver is up over 114%. It's probably more than that. It's about to break $80 an ounce. That report was filed yesterday, and since then, it's been peaking right at that $80 mark. Now, the guy breaks down kind of on the forefront of what that means and where the financial system is in peril, despite what the Trump economy says and the Trump economists and greatest economy ever and we're booming and this and that and everybody's focusing on tech and focusing on the tech bubble and everything else. What this symbolizes and represents is a lot of different things happening within the markets. Now, my prediction, I'm not a financial advisor in any way or anything else, but I do tend to follow my gut on this. And this is going to be the center of attention leading into the next month or so. It's going to become very, very obvious that we're in a financial system. Now, this is also a response to a lot of the Trump tariffs, and I'll explain to you why. Something that's going on with China. China just has announced that they will be controlling exports of precious metals such as silver starting at the beginning of the year, when essentially they will be organizing what goes out of the country. And they're going to be harboring a lot of precious metals like silver because, as you know, as we've always said, silver is a real commodity that is used in an industrial application. Now, I want to read a little blip of this report that talks about what's happening with Asia and what's going on with the Asian markets. As you know, the Asian markets right now have silver priced at $85 to $90 an ounce. And so they're trying to price out the competitors so people send their precious metals to Asia and they're going to be harboring that. Now, this has always been a balancing act with the Trump administration, with the aggressiveness of the tariffs and what it would do, understanding that China right now controls 95% of the global commodities in precious metals and manufacturing goods. That is a huge leverage. As you know, the United States has been helping setting up China and made them the global supplier for manufacturing goods. We used to be a production country, and now we're 70% consumer, which means we don't manufacture things. We don't have an actual economy. Everything's based on debt and purchasing power and leverage of us being the global reserve currency. Now, what's countering the global reserve currency has to do with the BRICS nations. They are setting up the BRICS nations to challenge the world reserve currency, which is currently the petrodollar, United States dollar, everything else. As we've been warning about, as we've been talking about, that is becoming unwound and happening. And with the Biden administration doing and creating all the tensions with Russia, that has essentially caused Russia to chum up to China, which then they in return are fending against us in the United States. And so it's just an absolute powder keg, no matter which way you look at it. As far as the financial system goes, personally, I would be trying to cut back on anything and everything that you can as far as expenses, because I do believe that we will be at a very, very volatile part of the economy in these next couple years, and it could take up to about 10 years to recover. So if you just bought that new house or just bought that new car or just took on a bunch of debt and you're already starting to default on that, might be a good time to consider against that. Now, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just a podcast guy. You can go to noncompliantamerica.com, check out our podcast, follow me on X at noncompliantaf. But everything that I've been seeing, it's kind of tied into that. And the premise of our stock market is so leveraged against the AI bubble and things going on with AI and the server fields and all the infrastructure money going into that and everything else. Everything's hinging on that, which I don't think that's a good bet. As you know, if you buy a computer, that computer is not going to go up in value. It's not going to have a long-term asset value. It depreciates very, very quickly. And a lot of the money that's being raised and a lot of the money that's being spent is going into that commodity, which is not a good bet. If you bought brand new cars to try to make money every year, eventually you're going to go bankrupt, because cars don't go up in value typically, unless you buy custom cars, special cars, things like that. But just the day-to-day, it's not a good investment. It doesn't produce outcome. It doesn't have growth. And so that's what's happening to me, what I see in the stock market that's going on. But listen to this. We've never seen anything like this before, but this is yet another case where that's entirely true. Needless to say, we've been witnessing, not from the news, but we've been trying to keep silver prices and copper prices suppressed. This is a quote from one of the head silver investors. The big financial institutions in the Western world have been attempting to suppress prices and are fighting a losing battle because of the AI revolution. It's going to require a vast amount of physical silver and physical copper. At this stage, we would take a truly apocalyptic event to stop the construction of thousands of console data centers that are currently going up all over the globe. At this time, so let's break this down. All these big data centers that they are trying to build and the trillions of dollars that the Trump economy is getting and bringing into the United States, to build those things, they need silver. And now China, which has been buying all of the silver globally as much as possible, putting in the biggest purchase orders possible, has just announced that they're no longer going to be exporting silver out of their country. This is the geopolitical war that we're going on, and we need to talk about it. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining me. We're talking about the AI revolution and how it correlates with silver and the price of silver booming. As you know, it's like $79.50 an ounce right now. What does that mean? That means demand is going through the roof. But if you heard the last segment before, they were kind of breaking down of these fabricated paper contracts that the bankers have been leveraging against the silver markets for decades and keeping the price down. If you go back to the 1960s, pre-1960s, silver was a standard commodity, and that was essentially broken after the 60s. And so they started producing paper contracts. Some people speculate 450 times to 1 are the contracts that have been issued in the silver vaults that can't be fulfilled. You're going to have 449 people that have contracts that are not able to get their tangible silver. What is that going to mean for the markets? That's going to mean a lot of volatility and things like that. So how can we all protect ourselves? How can we navigate ourselves around this? I still believe, and I know there's a staunch supporter of the KSLM family, Accurate PMR. You can go there and you can still buy commodities and precious metals. And I do suggest even a little bit that I would do that, because it's, we have a huge volatility in the market and it's being amplified. All of the strong, wild financial crisis scenarios typically happen around Christmas. The Federal Reserve Act was signed on Christmas Eve, late into the night, when everybody was sleeping. Well, this big financial issue with silver happened on Christmas Eve. So it's something very similar. So at this stage, it would take a truly apocalyptic event to stop the construction of thousands of data centers that are currently going up all over the globe. At the same time, there's been a worldwide explosion in demand for physical silver from individual investors as paper currencies rapidly lose their purchasing power. And we're seeing that. And that's been the argument with the price of things going down. That has to do with the buying power of the dollar. 30 years ago, the dollar had a lot more value. So if you just have money sitting in a savings account somewhere, even a savings account at 1-2%, when inflation and the buying index goes up 13% that year, you've lost 10% of value of your dollar. So it becomes a slippery slope to do that. That's why investing is important. In investing into hard commodities has been way more valuable because it's a lot more stable backed system. Now we could get into cryptocurrency, stable coins. Some people swear by them. I know it's not going away. I know it does play a factor as far as preservation of wealth and investing. I just don't know enough about it. I haven't got enough into it, which I probably am going to be doing this year, at least looking into it so I can give some form of advice and understanding of where that goes. It's still the Wild West. There's a lot of volatility in it. It's just really interesting, the complexities that have been built in regards to the monetary system and the crooked bankers that have essentially been controlling everything for generations are suddenly starting to lose control in some form or fashion, but gaining control in others. So in Asia, there was so much demand for silver in India a couple months ago that they actually caused a severe physical shortage. The Indian silver markets had been gripped by unprecedented silver squeeze in October 2025, which was just a few months ago, sending prices to historic highs, and that's what we've seen, and creating severe physical shortage. This crisis, fueled by a unique blend of festive demand, Speculative buying and constrained global supply has had immediate significant implications to why within the Indian market, but also across international bullion markets. The traditional festive season of Dantras and Dwaila has ignited a buying frenzy, pushing domestic silver prices to record levels with physical market premiums skyrocketing and the global ripple effect causing scarcity even in major bullion hubs. This is what we're seeing right now. It's similar, not the same thing, but it's similar if you guys followed what happened to GameStop. Remember with GameStop, it had giant leverages of shorts against GameStop, and these billionaire hedge fund managers were trying to kill the stock. And somebody got on Reddit and said, hey, they are trying to kill this stock. Let's buy it and drive the price up. And they drove the price up like 400% against their shorts, and they had to call their shorts. And it's just been a huge spiral effect. And I guess something's supposed to be happening with GameStop here in the near future. But this is a very similar thing. They've been running shorts on silver, and silver didn't go down like they said it would. And so now they're having to pay the piper, and they didn't have the money to pay the piper. So they had to borrow against the Fed. That's a very, very, very slippery slope. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens on Monday, because Monday, the markets are closed right now. On Monday is going to be very telling to see what happens. Physical silver is literally used in thousands upon thousands of high-tech products. And many are convinced that's what we're witnessing today. It is just the beginning. As we mentioned, the Samsung has been working on a new generation of the solid-state battery that threatens to revolutionize the EV industry. And according to my research, they've already have contracts for 2027, which means they need to start manufacturing now for the year 2027, and that requires a high level of silver. Recent disclosures from SDI suggested that the progress in the field has been accelerated, particularly through the use of silver composite and an anodyne layer, which is required for every single battery in every car. Well, imagine that goes to cell phones. Imagine that goes to different things. We're going to get more into it on the other side. Make sure to like and subscribe. Go to noncompliantamerica.com or our news site, news.noncompliantamerica.com. Follow me on X at noncompliantaf. And as always, you're listening to KSLM 104.3 FM, 1220 AM. Your best location for news. We're going to have the cutting edge information to get you set up for the best aspect into the near future after this break. All right. So we gave our 2 cents about, the silver markets and where things are headed in the economy and what that's going to mean. But I want to get more into kind of citizen journalism that's going on, that's exploding, that's really exciting to see. There's this guy on X right now. His name is Nick Shirley. He's been going door to door to all these tax-funded daycare centers that were owned by Somalis in Minnesota, and just kind of letting you see the fraud. I know you guys can't see this video. I'm just going to play a part of it because I think it's super interesting, and it's very great work. And you know what? It's not complicated at all. All he's doing is grabbing a camera and going out there and just going to these locations, notating what they look like. What does the signage look like? I know that one of them, not the one that I'm going to play, but one of them, he noticed that it was called the something Learning Center. It was supposed to be a learning center, and they didn't even spell learning correctly in the writing. That's how brazen this fraud has been. And so he's been doing a phenomenal job posting these videos, just going door to door and just asking these people, hey, it says here on the tax forms that you guys are supposed to be housing 99 children for childcare. And he's interviewing people around the neighborhoods and he's saying, you know, have you ever seen any children here? No, there's no children. There's no children. There's no children. One instance, they got $1.4 million a year at their facility. And there was no signs of any children anywhere. And they're supposed to have 99 of them there. Really interesting, right? We're going to play a short little clip of him going to one of these places to kind of expose the fraud. Now, this is just a peek behind the curtain. You know, when they say we have a $6-7 trillion deficit in our federal budget, a lot of that money, which is so disappointing in the fact of what happened to Doge and Elon, a huge amount of that money is going to institutions like this in state facilities, and I know it's happening in Oregon as well. That's why Democrats are Democrats, because they're stealing, robbing, and pillaging from the taxpayer, from the federal, and putting it into all these NGOs and these ridiculous organizations and just siphoning money. That's why they don't like the Trump administration. That's why most people have Trump derangement syndrome, is because he threatens the very livelihood of their grift. And for the most part, I truly believe at its fundamental core, whether Democrats want to admit it or not, it's not about climate change. It's not about LGBTQ. It's not about equality. It's not about any of that crap. I personally believe at a very primitive level, whether people want to admit it or not, the reason they vote Democrat is because of things like this. They're either involved, profiting from it, or directly correlated to these organizations. And it's way bigger than you can imagine. Way bigger. The homeless crisis, the homeless non-government organizations that are there to protect the homeless and help with the homeless. Well, it's actually concluded that homeless has gone up. Well, why wouldn't it? When you throw money at something, people flock to it. Kind of like what's happening with TPUSA, but that's another story. Let's take a look, listen to this report real quick. Nick Shirley, then we'll get into some other news here.
I knocked on the door, and to my surprise, somebody actually answered the door.
Hello? Can we speak? Yeah. I would like to check a child in the daycare. Why? Can I speak to a manager? Where can I get paperwork to file for my son? I wanted to put my son Joey in daycare.
And after a few questions, the lady went silent.
Looks like little Joey Shirley ain't going to daycare here. And now where are we going?
Now we're going to Sweet Angel Childcare.
We're in the middle of a strip mall here inside of this neighborhood.
In fiscal year 2025, this facility, which has its license for 74 kids, was paid $1.26 million in tax money. And there are no kids, and all the facilities are the same way, all of them.
Let's see if anyone opens.
Yeah, let's see.
Once again, I try to find a spot for my son Joey, and they would not open the door.
I want to put my son Joey in daycare. Cause I need a spot to put my son Joey.
Yes.
Is this your daycare center?
No, I work there. What's happened?
I just want to put a child in daycare, but all the daycare centers seem to be closed. No one's opening the doors.
You work here?
I was, yeah. What's happened?
Where are the kids?
Yeah?
It says it's licensed for 74 children. Right here, state of Minnesota. Where are the kids? They got paid $1.26 million in fiscal year 2025. It says they have a capacity for 74 children.
When?
Where are the kids? Right here. State of Minnesota website. You work here and you don't know?
I don't know. I was there before. I don't know what's going on.
Were there any kids when you worked here?
He's there. Kids there. What's
How
up?
many?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
You worked here. Okay, well then you're not of any help.
Can I put my son in a daycare here?
No, I don't know.
Can I speak to someone?
No, I don't know.
No? Yeah, I would like to see if I can put my son Joey here.
Who's your son, Joey?
My son Joey. Can I check out daycare center?
No. He's a liar. I'm the owner.
Do you?
Wow. So that is, to me, that is powerful, powerful journalism. And as I said, it's not very complicated to go do. All you have to do is do a little research, figure this out. But he's uncovering an astronomical amount of fraud. And now something just broke with Gavin Newsom. Apparently there's 76 something million dollars in fraud that they're uncovering now. The rats are leaving the sinking ship. The whistleblowers are coming out in droves because they don't have the corrupt president at the helm, letting the grift continue. And that is great, great, great news. Super exciting for that. And so we'll be tuning in more of that. I want to play some more of those videos as far after the new year. But as you know, this is going to be the last show on Non-Compliant America for the year 2025. And I just want to thank every single one of you for listening and paying attention and having an open mind and help us explore and navigate the news cycles to the best that we can to try to preserve, protect, and help your family navigate these crazy waters that we're in. And I don't think it's going to get any better. I personally don't think it's going to get any better. I think it's only going to get worse because just like anything, when you cut the cancer out or to eliminate the cancer, which I believe most of the U.S. government is a cancer, it's a grift. They're not here to protect you. They're not here to serve. It's not the 1950s like the perception of the great government is here to protect you. It's not about that. They are all have immunity. They're not here to protect you. And I think as that unwinds, as we start to sift out the cancer, not because of the Trump administration, let me tell you that, not because of the Trump administration, it's because of you. It's because of the listener. It's because of the active individuals like Nick Shirley that are doing great work and holding me accountable. There's a political currency that happens. The currency is the spread of information. How much are people concerned about these specific topics? How loud are people getting in the faces of these senators and governors and politicians to push the agenda of looking out for the American people? That's the real currency. That's the level of the fight. That's why Netanyahu has spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to sway the influence of the political arm of the political climate of the propaganda so that will rule in his favor because there's a monetary benefit to that. If he can control the narrative, if he can censor people, then he can then be the savior that he's trying to be. So it's very important on all accounts and everything else. So Zelensky is set to meet Trump on Sunday, tomorrow, for a peace plan. He says he's 90% ready. So that'll be interesting to see whatever happens with that ridiculous war that should have never happened. But they've also now confirmed that U.S. airstrikes hit 2 ISIS camps in Nigeria. Now, why are we in Nigeria? Why are we spending money and time and energy on that? I don't know. There could be some geopolitical thing that we don't know about. But why are we continuing to escalate things around the world? Now, this could pertain to the silver commodities markets and some of the mines. And if we see and watch what China's doing and how they're reacting, how they're going to restrict exports of things like silver, all while the stock market's being propped up by trillions and trillions of dollars for AI server development, which needs silver. And the top leading manufacturer, supplier of silver, they're not the top, but they hold most of the precious metals, 95%, cuts off supply. We're going to be left holding an empty bag. Do you see the connection between that? And so every time a country gets insolvent or gets in a very strong financial crisis, what do? They go to war. It's always the default. And so are we heading into a bigger, wider expansion of a bigger war? I don't know. We'll be right back.
Yeah, I know it's rude to be bragging. They never catching us slacking. Me and my buddy, we working hard for this money.
All right, welcome back. Last segment, Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. This is the last show of 2025. When we were playing some stuff going on in Minnesota, and I asked the question, isn't something similar happening within Oregon? And this just popped on my feed from earlier. It was actually last night, I believe. Oregon Citizen on X does phenomenal work. She is very, very informative with what's going on in Oregon. She hosted the incoming potential governor, Danielle Bethel, where she was talking about the $422 million that was appropriated in 2020 for all the wildfire victims. But take a listen to this X space real quick.
Oregon Housing and Community Services is a standalone entity, standalone agency that's mission is to assist the development and sustainability of housing in Oregon. And it basically what it does in its scope of work by its original design is it's supposed to take money that's allocated to it from the legislature and from Congress to invest in grant and loan type programs to do like multifamily housing. Mm-hmm. They have several different programs that they take taxpayer dollars and funnel them through these systems that they put all these benchmarks and designs on for developers to gain access to, or nonprofits to gain access to build housing. And the Governor Brown in 2020 thought, well, gosh, since we had, like 5,000 units of housing burned to the ground in 2020 across all these counties, we should just let them be the leading entity on recovery, which was a terrible decision because they didn't have the expertise or staff to do that work. So they had to hire all these people. They hired this brilliant guy from North Carolina to come out here and build the wildfire recovery program. And that's a whole nother conversation. It's been these poor people, and I say poor people because when I come into the room, I'm just very direct and matter of fact at this point. And I tell them, I hope you don't take this personally, but I am attacking you because it is you that is standing in the way of these people getting recovered. It is you that is standing in the way for these communities.
It's not even logical that it would take this long. What are they doing?
Hiring themselves and multiplying like gremlins. They have more employees in this wildfire recovery department today than necessary. The bulk of the money that they have spent from this federal appropriation is on state level employees. It's not even on recovery in the communities.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's infuriating. And it's not even a partisan issue because I directly work with Commissioner Heather Buck out of Lane County, who's the polar opposite of me ideologically. And when she and I come into the room together, it's going to be fireworks because we're only coming in to be yelling at somebody. And it's unfortunate that it's got escalated to the point of just anger. Because for me, my neighbors' lives are on the line. I am neighbors to these people who were impacted by the fire.
And that's absolutely true. Danielle Bethel's community, where she's at, was up the canyon where most of the wildfires took place, and thousands of people were lost homes. I know people personally that their homes burnt down to nothing. And they had a $325,000 evaluation on their insurance to rebuild even remotely close to what they had. It cost almost $750,000. They had to pull $400,000 roughly out of their pocket to even be made whole again. And they would have been huge advocates for this money. So where did that $422 million deficit that was allotted by the federal government, where did that go? Governor Kotek, previously Governor Brown. These people, just like what's happening in Minnesota, these people are grifting off the system. And this comes back to my original point. Why is somebody a Democrat? Why does somebody vote for a Democrat? Why are they so unhinged about asking questions? Why do they get so radicalized and get personal and roll out their radical wing of Antifa when you don't cooperate with them, or you become too loud or too logical by just simply asking questions? It's because you're tapping into things that affect them directly. They are grifting money from you, the taxpayer, every single day. And this is just a peek behind the curtain of what's happening in Oregon. We need to have grassroots individuals going to different entities like this, questioning the NGOs, going in and exposing the amount of fraud that's happening in this state. Because we sit back and we wonder, why is nothing getting done? Why aren't things moving? Why is it we get a Republican in some form of office and nothing seems to change? Because the entire apparatus is so vast and so large, and everybody's in on it. Everybody that's part of the government is in on it, on the secret. They all know, nod, nod, wink, wink. Yeah, we just go to these fundraisers and we set up shop in the empty mall in the Clackamas Town Center. That's empty now, but now it's full of just a bunch of NGOs that need to put an office somewhere, and they need to spend their budget because, as you know, if you're a state worker, as you know, if you're in the budget committee meetings or you're in any of the fiscally responsible positions in government, what's the rule of thumb? You always got to spend the money, even if you don't need to spend it. So you need to buy things that you don't need to buy. You need to transfer money elsewhere and get it off of the books by the end of the year, because next year you won't get that money back if you don't spend it the year before. Your budget will actually go down. Do you see how upside down world that is? So how do we fix it? I don't know. Is Danielle Bethel the answer as governor? I haven't really quite dove into the governor's race yet. I don't have a say in the matter. But I'd love to talk to her. I'd love to have her on the show and, discuss some bigger things. I think Oregon could play a wider role in cooperating with a lot of the things that's going on federally, such as the gas tax. And I'm not talking about the recent gas tax. I'm talking about the 2019 gas tax. Recently, I was out of town, different part of the country, and gas was $1.50 cheaper per gallon. $1.50. Now, it wasn't anywhere near where they're fracking or, pulling gas out of the ground or anything else. It was just cheaper. And my oldest son was like, well, why is the gas so much cheaper here? And it's because our state is taxing us into servitude, into slavery, making us more impoverished, forcing us to get onto these government programs and systems where they make money for every dollar that they issue. They get paid back. They make money off of your suffrage. They make money off of your situations. They're waiting for you. And at the end of the day, if you can't get a job, you can just go work for DHS. You can just go work for the state and continue the grift. The state of Oregon has so so many employees. Everybody's a state worker. I was at this thing at the Elsinore the other day, and then we're going to wrap up. And the comedian was like, hey, how many police officers are in the building? And like half the crowd, there were all these police officers everywhere, state workers. They work for different government agencies. They're the only ones going out. They're the only ones doing okay. They're the only ones not suffering. They're higher paid. They have an easy job. They don't have any accountability. Thanks for listening, Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. We'll see you next week. See you next year.